We have with us Dr. Yair Hirschfeld of the S. Daniel Abraham Center for Strategic Dialogue, and my co-host is Air Commodore Andrew Lambert. Dr. Hirschfeld, welcome.
Welcome. I'm very happy to be with you. It is a wonderful occasion and a great challenge.
Dr. Hirschfeld, you were going to tell us some more about the Iran P5+1 deal and the state of play, and perhaps share your thoughts with us. Please go ahead.
I'll be happy to do so. Actually, I wanted to start with telling you what should be changed. Because the assumption is that President Trump and the entire team that he's assembling now is committed to reopen the discussions with Iran under the assumption and the argument that I personally share most of it, that the agreement was good but far from being good enough. I'll tell you where it was good. It was good that it has seriously put the Iranian effort to develop a military nuclear armament on a slower track. It's postponing the dangerous day when they will have nuclear arms, but it's postponing it maybe not far more than for the 10 or 11 years, which may be an important success, but it still is not good enough. I tell you what was lacking in the agreement. There were 3 or 4 things lacking. What was lacking is a far more excessive control system of what is going on. Also, there are quite serious control matters. What is lacking in control system of the missile system and the capability to have ballistic missiles with nuclear carriers on head of them. That is not totally was not included. What is probably worst of all is that the terror activities, the hegemonical tendencies of Iran in the Gulf and beyond in the entire Middle East have been strengthened and reinforced by the agreement instead of weakened. So if we want to change things, these are the things we would like to change. We would like to change an understanding that there will be no day where they can have they will, even not in 10, not in 20 years, they will have nuclear arms, and that the armament for it will stop, and that other aggressive means they can develop in order to threaten the entire area, and actually Europe and the United States also, that this will be strongly limited. And we obviously want Iran to stop its support for terror organizations like Hamas, like Hezbollah, and other groups. Now, the question is not what we want to change, but the real question is how can we achieve this? And I will give you first a theoretical answer, and then I'll look at the theoretical answer if you're okay. There are 3 options in liking to change it. The first option, and the option that was used actually in the past, is an effective means of coercive policy. For coercive policy, you need 5 conditions, and I would question the fact that I don't believe that those 5 conditions are all in place. The first condition is a very clear and very simple demand that has to be brought forward. And actually, we have more than a simple demand. We have a group of demands that have to be put ahead of towards the Iranians. You need, second, and this is more difficult, an all-embracing regional and international coalition to support the demand. And it's not clear if we can achieve this. Then third, you would need sanctions to apply in order to make it clear that we are serious. Now, fourth, you will have to make it clear that you're willing to use military power to obtain the outcome you need, not necessarily immediately, but in the process if you're going along. And fifth, you need a way to give the Iranians a way out, a certain face saving, that they can supply, they can actually go along with the demand, but not lose too much face into their internal political setup. A coercive coercive policy would demand all these 5 points. I'm not sure if we have the capability to put this in power now, but it is an option that we should look at. The second option that we have is an option of containment. And containment would be that you build a strong international and regional coalition to minimize the danger they can do, mainly on the regional affairs, mainly on terror affairs, and mainly making it clear that you can renew sanctions at whatever moment you want, and in any way where you can go ahead and make further demands of them. And the third option is to move towards negotiations. Negotiations where they could be part of it. Now, the way it was done in the past, the way it actually happened was that the Obama administration, with Israeli insistence and with the strong support of Great Britain and France, went along the logic from coercive policy approach to a containment approach to negotiations. And I would be very happy if this would be pragmatic. If you would ask me in a quiet room, or not even in a quiet room, but here, I would tell you I don't think this is it is very doable today. And I'll tell you why. We've been going through this, and there are too many, and the sense has been that the agreement that has been signed has been a great achievement. You have Russia who want to support Iran strongly, or at least in some ways, and will prevent a strong American move against Iran in doing it. You have the Chinese who will not probably go along with it. The Europeans have also difficulties, and in the United States itself, there's opposition against this strong, strict, coercive policy approach. And it won't be easy at all for Trump to build the necessary coalition that would make it necessary to preserve a successful coercive policy. So I have my doubts that this is what is going to happen. Now, I would say that this is altogether a bad news approach, but I'll try to give you a good news approach. And basically, I'll give you my major conclusion. The major conclusion is that in order to build a successful containment, I believe the key in many ways lies in Israel and Saudi Arabia. The containment has to be part of a wider concept, and the containment has to be different on different issues. On some issues, you may have two different approaches. You may have a different approach on Syria, a different approach on the Gulf, and a different approach on the wider regional concept and wider international activity. Now, from an Israeli point of view, the assumption today is that Israel's interest is clearly to build a close security alliance with the Sunni Arab states. And the assumption goes actually beyond that. The assumption is not that this is only an Israeli interest, but it is mainly due to Iran a very substantial interest of Saudi Arabia, of Jordan, of Egypt, of the United Arab Emirates, of the Gulf Council countries. So there's a common interest in doing that. And from my understanding, Trump is in this concept, in this sphere, on the Israeli Sunni Arab theater of action. Trump is in a negotiating position. So Trump can actually make a lot of moves to put this action together. You have today serious cooperation between Israel and Jordan, Israel and Egypt, and also a little bit less between Israel and Saudi Arabia on the military affairs. But it is necessary to upgrade it and to take it several points forward. We've got an inkling that Prime Minister Netanyahu is willing to pay an important price on the Palestinian issue on this matter, and it goes along with President Trump's demand to be in a negotiating position also in the Israeli-Palestinian arena. Now, I believe it cannot start on the Israeli-Palestinian arena directly. It has to go via the regional circle, and we have to start negotiations here, Israel and Saudi Arabia. By them, widen the Israeli understandings with the Sunni Arab countries, and then follow up on the Palestinian side. On the Palestinian side, there's also a potential negotiating position. And the potential negotiating position on the Palestinian side is actually what our Prime Minister quietly told the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. He said he's willing to do serious state building in Area C, where they are not allowed to do state building today, against some differentiated understandings on settlement activity, particularly in the settlement blocks. And whatever this deal will be, it would put Trump in a negotiating position on that. You have Trump in a negotiating position on Saudi Arabia and Israel, and then an Israeli Arab Sunni understanding, and you have an understanding, a possible negotiating position in the Israeli-Palestinian concept as a result of it, as an outcome of it. And I think this is a block that would startly show Iran that they have to be very careful in causing too much trouble. It probably will cause serious Iranian provocations, and it will be necessary to put the Iranians in place, but it will be creating new rules of game and new rules of understanding. It will make it clear that Iranian aggression with Hamas and Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda and all of these other wonderful people, quote unquote, who are murderers and terrorists, that the Iranian support for these guys will cost them a very serious and high price. It is a different situation in Syria. It's a different situation in Syria. We know from the Egyptian president, we know from King Abdullah, that they fear that the devil we know is better than the devil we surely will get if the devil we know will go away. And you have a very clear position in most of the Arab world today, a very clear position in the Arab world today, that there is kicking Assad out of power now will create a very serious void which the most militant groups will move into and cause far more damage than is done. We also know that Russia, that in order to take action and contain Iran on one side, it will be important to have some understandings with Russia and Syria too. So that you contain Iran in the Gulf, you contain Iran in all the terror activities, but there may be some joint interests regarding Syria that one has to follow up and deal with. You need a differentiated approach in it. From my point of view, what would be essential and very, very important is to assist the Kurds in Syria, to move ahead and strongly establish a de facto autonomy in close cooperation with the Kurdish autonomy in Iraq. And it will open up new ways for stabilizing also Syria and also Iraq in a coordinated manner. Now, the great question is how this will work together with Turkey. How will Turkey be part of it or will not be part of it? As much as I understand, the tendency in Washington will be to reach out to Ankara. The tendency in Washington will be to seek a coordinated Turkish, Saudi, Arab, Israeli containment of Iran in coordination with Russia. I'm not sure that this will work. Because Egyptian-Turkish competition, Saudi-Turkish competition, basically the tendency of Erdogan to be all dominant will make it very difficult to create one united position. Now, the picture that I'm actually trying to paint is that if we want to go from coercive policy to containment to negotiations, I think we are going to fail. But if we are going to take the other way, from negotiations to containment, the negotiations actually build the ways and means of a containment, of effective containment of Iranian aggressive activity, of effective containment that will make it possible to revisit also the nuclear issues and the ballistic and missile issues. We go from negotiations to containment. We can move then from containment to a coercive policy move. But it does not work if we don't get the supportive coalition together. Now, whether this is going to happen or not, I don't know. But by and large, I think it is a policy concept that we could work on. You have to tell me how Cyprus comes into that picture. From my point of view, there are many issues I didn't speak about. I didn't speak about the energy issue. I didn't speak about the military control of the Eastern Mediterranean, of preventing Iran and Russia to have a strong foothold in the Eastern Mediterranean, of strengthening Egypt and the present situation, of having a coordination with Israel, Cyprus, Greece, and Egypt as a bloc that can strengthen Western and the regional interests in this area. Also in the energy component, also the security component, also in the promotion of trade altogether. This has to be somehow part of it, but if the negotiations on the Gulf, on Israeli, Saudi and Israeli Arab cooperation, and have to be different, if this is a different bloc that would fit into it, but I have far more to listen to you, how you see that, because you have far more knowledge on that and a far better understanding. I would say so far my introductory remarks.
Can I ask you the first question then? You seem to be optimistic that, or perhaps not as much as optimistic, but at least you hinted that you thought there was a possibility you could make a change so that Iran could never have nuclear weapons. Did I understand that you think that is a real possibility, or is that just a utopian ideal?
I think, if Iran has nuclear weapons under this regime, this is a very, very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, never say never in politics, but if they postpone it for 10 years, you can postpone it for another 10 years and for another 10 years, and you definitely have to take an action in order to prevent them to have this toy that can destroy the world. And from a Jewish point of view, an Israeli point of view, it's an existential threat that we take very serious. We live on a very small place, and if they drop one nuclear bomb or two nuclear bombs at us, the disaster is outrageous. Now we have deterrence capacity, and we are serious in meaning this deterrence capacity. But I would not rely totally on absolute rationalism of the Iranian regime.
Okay.
The rationalism, the logic of taking irrational steps is often very, very serious.
Do you think there will be an attitudinal change then between now and say 10 years from now? Will the current crop of young Iranians now be in a position of power and say, we don't really want this capability? Is there some means of inducing a change in the mentality of the young?
The answer is you have to work on it. In many ways, I'm just reading the book on Kissinger. In 1953, he suggested exactly activities how to do this with the Soviet Union in a policy of containment that does not only containment but has a psychological warfare where you reach into Iranian society. We have, I'll only give you an example. We have a wonderful singer, Rita, who sings wonderful Persian songs, and they are sent into Iran, and they open up hearts, and they create about attitudinal change. Now, this song alone doesn't do it. You have to do far more than that. But you need a policy of both containment and an outreach both. both the dialogue, confrontation. You need a policy of what I would call confrontation and dialogue at the same time. And what I described before is a policy of there's a strong confrontation on regarding us and Hamas and Hezbollah and all of these supports and on the Gulf, and there's a dialogue on other areas. And I think you can pursue this quite effectively. And we have a lot of means that have been learned in the last 60, 70 years that we can apply. The answer is yes. Yes, there can be attitudinal change. And I would say more than that. My PhD is in Iran. What has happened in Iran is that there was an ideological change. And there's a new regime since 1979, but they've lost the hearts of the people.
Yeah.
They have, Iranian society is far more progressive, far more liberal than some of the Arab societies. But they're suppressed by totalitarian regime, both totalitarian regime that keeps itself in power with means that we do not judge, that we do not justify. And I think we have means to deal with it, and we have means to also have an opening up to also put them in place. I think it is worth to think of the necessary attitudinal change, yes.
Can I ask you, do you think the Iranians will actually stop any further development whatsoever over these next 10 or 11 years? The reason I asked this question, I was in India in 1997, and it was very interesting to me. They said, of course, India does not have a nuclear weapon. And we said, what do you mean by that? The fuse is over there, and the bomb is over the other side of the room. Or are we in a situation where genuinely it is a long, long way away, and there's not just a question of joining up the parts, it will actually take them a considerable period of time to manufacture, even if say, Donald Trump withdrew from the Iranian agreement?
You know, in 2003, the Iranians suggested to stop their nuclear activities. And they suggested to stop their support for Hamas and Hezbollah. And it was, out of ignorance, rejected by both President Bush and Prime Minister Sharon. It was an opportunity to do it. But it was no coincidence that it happened in 2003. It was in 2003 when the Americans had taken active military action against Afghanistan and active military action against Iraq, and the Iranians felt themselves in a dear and complicated situation. It means there was a sense of physical containment and a certain sense of encirclement. No, I don't think that this can simply be repeated, but it means that under certain conditions, the Iranian decision-making apparatus will go along with demands that are coming from a united coalition, directed to them and against them. And I definitely think that this is essential to take along this way and show them we are not enemies of the Iranian people. We have enormous respect of Iranian culture, of Iranian achievements, of Iranian vested interests. And Iran can play a stabilizing role in the area. And on some issues it does it. And against the drug traffic from Afghanistan, Iran is playing a positive role. And in the other areas where Iran can play a stabilizing role. But it cannot be on a win-lose position. It has to be in a win-win position. And in negotiations, you don't negotiate only because you're nice to each other. You know, please be nice and don't do this. But you negotiate also with hard power. And what I'm suggesting is to use substantial hard power in order to have an effective soft power dialogue with them to see how to get into a more stabilizing mode of action. And the tendency in Iran, there's a fertile ground to do that. There's strong nationalism, there's a fertile ground to do that. The difficulty is the institutional setup of the Iranian structure. And but you have moderating forces in Iran that are getting stronger. So there's no reason not to work on that and to promote that.
Is there a role for cyber warfare in monitoring Iranian activity?
For cyber,
Yeah.
I have difficulty using my computer. So I belong to the last millennia, not to this. But the answer is yes, obviously. There is cyber activity also influencing people, also on kind of Twitter and Facebook and these things like this, and in many other ways. And there are other cyber activities. Israel has been quite good on it. I don't know, in cyber protection, 20% of the world industry on cyber protection comes from Israel. So our population is a little bit less than 20% of the world population. I don't want to give you that. So yes, obviously it plays a role. I'm not the person to ask about it.
Okay.
Yair, to bring you back to those 5 points, so that I understand a little bit better that methodology. That's the 5 points you mentioned was to impose amendments on Iran, or to entice them to come back to negotiating table.
Both. I'm quoting academic theoretical work that is out there, speaking about coercive policy. If you look at the articles and the work done by, I'm an historian, and my enemies are the political scientists, but sometimes I look at what they write. And the political scientists there's good work on that, saying that any coercive policy needs these 5 components. A clear demand, a supportive coalition, sanctions, a willingness to use military power, and the way out of meant for the other side too. And if these 5, and to put these five conditions into place, it's not easy. What I'm actually saying is that it would be better to have these 5 points in place and then go to containment negotiations. But we have to go the other way around, because we won't get those. We won't be able to put these five conditions into place. Now,
the objective would be to renegotiate the deal, or to show a very strong hand, because it seems to me that the climate, may or may not be right for a renegotiation, because for the Iranians, the current deal is quite good. So asking them to renegotiate something which already satisfies them, you're right. You need a level of coercion, but on the other hand, you don't want to get them to abandon it completely. I mean, it's a practical issue. You're right. I mean, this is a little theoretical.
Yeah, you have, the diplomacy is the art of the possible. What I actually said is negotiations don't, what you are saying, and I agree with you, I wouldn't say to start immediate negotiations with Iran to reopen them. I think you're right, why should they say yes? But if you start, you negotiate building a containment structure around them, which you have to negotiate. With the Russians, with the Saudis, with the Arabs, and then you build one building stone after the other. That's what I'm actually suggesting.
Can I ask you just about the use of Turkey? You mentioned the Kurds a number of times, and I was the British commander for the northern no-fly zone for a period, and we were charged directly with looking after the Kurds in the northern no-fly zone in the northern part of Iraq. But I'm very aware of the absolute hostility of Turkey to anything that involves the Kurds. It seems to me that if we're trying to get Turkey involved and the Kurds involved, it's going to be really quite difficult, isn't it, to get some sort of combined position to go to the Iranians with?
No doubt. Also, the Iranians have difficulty with the Kurds.
Well, indeed,
Iranians have difficulty with the Kurds. But the truth is that the Kurds, Turkey has managed the Kurdish problem in Iraq in a very interesting manner. They have invested tremendously in the Kurdish autonomous area, and they have turned the Iraqi Kurds into a potential, I don't want to say ally, but they've almost created the Finlandization, the Finland kind of situation between the Soviet Union and Finland, between them and the Kurds in Iraq. Because not one of them, the economic structure in the Kurdish areas in Iraq is strongly supported, maintained by Turkey. Now the difficulties in Syria. Now in Syria, you've got two different Kurdish groups. You have basically the group supported by the PKK, who the Turkish will not be very happy to deal with. And you have the Kurdish groups that are supported by Barzani, by the Iraqi side. There is an ongoing effort by people from your country, I don't want to go into details, but there is an ongoing British effort to mediate between the two Kurdish groups in Syria. And this has to be part of the concept. The Iranians will not get what they want, but they will get some things they want. The Turkish will not get what they want, but some things they want. The truth is for Israel too. So the game is complicated, but you will have to have a policy of dialogue and confrontation with Turkey too, as much as with Iran and with the others. It's easy to say, it's not so easy to make. We may need a Kissinger in order to do these things, and I'm not sure if we have a Kissinger at hand. He's now 93 years old, he's a little bit too old to become Secretary of State. But conceptually, I think we have an idea how to proceed.
Do you think the Turks actually have much leverage when it comes to discussions with the Iranians?
I think the Turks have an economic interest in relations with Iran. The Turks despise the Iranians, they fear the Iranians. But politics are not always about love. They're often you have strange bedfellows. And I can tell you that in Europe, I was in Germany 2 weeks ago, the atmosphere is very anti-Turkish, and in states far less. In England, the situation is outrageous. You're asking Europe to get Turkey part of the European Union. On the other side, you oppose some of the other things, which is a contradiction. Yes. But in the end, I believe that we have to talk more about Turkey, but in the end, economic interests will have the upper hand, and European and American policies will be decisive. My sense is that in the United States there will be an outreach towards Turkey and not the opposite. There will be far more dialogue than containment and confrontation. And I assume that we agree that a more stronger policy towards Turkey would be more effective. I don't think it will be happening in the short term. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Can I press you as well on the likelihood of there being a Saudi Arabian bomb at some stage?
If there is part of the reason to prevent Iran from a bomb, if Iran is a bomb, Saudi Arabia is 3 months later also a bomb.
As soon as that.
So the part of the danger of Iran having the bomb is that there will be tremendous proliferation in the air. All the others will come after, because everybody is going to be deadly afraid of them, deadly afraid of the military power that it will give to Iran for conventional warfare, and then you'll have immediately a reason to stop Iran and to prevent Iran is exactly this, that proliferation will be outrageous, and the non-proliferation concept will have totally failed. And if the non-proliferation concept totally fails, it's the most dangerous development for humanity, not only for Israel.
And of course, the problem will be that if somebody does let a bomb off, that will just be the first of many.
Short answer, yes. And
How
then
far-
somewhere...
How far do you think the proliferation would extend? If Iran did get a bomb and then Saudi, how many other nations do you think would be likely to follow suit?
Egypt and Turkey.
Do you think both of them?
And if we, assuming we don't have the bomb, we would follow too.
Yeah, Yair, following on the Saudis, you suggested that an Israeli Sunni Arab, Israeli Saudi understanding would help in making Iranian containment more effective. What would be the nature of such an understanding? Would it be diplomatic, economic, military?
We have this discussion in Israel. Our Prime Minister argues for tactical reasons that he wants there's an alliance with the Arab states without the Palestinians. If I'm an academic, and not only an academic with some experience in the region, I can tell my Prime Minister that without making substantial moves on the Palestinian front, this will not happen. But if there's headway on the Israeli-Saudi understanding, which will mean far more security cooperation against incitement, against terror, against smuggling of arms, on economic issues, building up, having a coordinated strategy how to stabilize the region. There's a package that has to be discussed. There has to be substantial headway towards a two-state solution with the Palestinians. And there has to be, can't solve all issues in one phase. You can have a piece of paper that you could sign tomorrow that will not be worth the ink on it and not even the value of the paper. You need a process of responsible Palestinian state building that has to go along with it. And we can design such a process. We have all the knowledge of how to do it. And there's a lot of thinking going on in Jerusalem how to promote, how to proceed on this complex.
Can I press you a little bit on the hard power options? Because it seems to me the danger of a hard power threat is that one day you may have to carry it out. And if you do that, will the cause of non-proliferation be set back, I don't know, hundreds of years, if not permanently?
You have an Iranian hard power activity.
Sorry, so
you have an Iranian hard power activity going on. You have Iranian hard power activity is that they are paying for terror against Israel. They're paying for other activities in Yemen. They're doing a lot of military and proxy terror action, which is all hard power. And you definitely need to confront this Iranian hard power action with hard power action of this. If you need an all-right war, the answer is no. Obviously, the coercive policy, the aim of coercive policy is to prevent a war. The experience we have is that people who want peace, I come from the peace camp. People who only want peace and are not willing not willing to take any action against it, will in the end not end up with peace. People are willing to say they're not peace under every condition and no military action under any condition, will have a chance of succeeding. So we have there's not only one way of hard power. We will be thinking of our former head of Mossad, who died almost 9 months ago. And he was a wonderful man. He had a very limited manner of using hard power, different forms of hard power. The answer is hard power is not. There are different forms and different ways of doing this. I'm a big supporter of Hubert Smith's book, The Use of Power, which you probably will know. But in the end, you need some kind of, you have to make it clear that you're serious about what you say.
Do you not think oil might be a better weapon to put sanctions on their oil, which they've only just reasonably restarted, to threaten that you would not take their oil?
I'm not sure. I have to think about it. I don't think, I tell you the difficulty. I don't want to undermine, I don't want to permit, it depends. I don't have I don't have a clever answer to that. But maybe oil is a way.
But I'm intrigued. Do you think there are enough costs that you could impose on Iran's surrogates, on Iran's allies, that your hard power would still be effective, certainly as a threat, and maybe as an actual force if you had to use it?
No, I'm not. I don't want to shoot immediately and don't kill everybody immediately. Don't misunderstand me.
No.
So if there's ways and means to show that you're serious, fair enough. But let's test these options one after the other.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, just as a last question, what are the chances of amending the treaty in a way that it's more in Israel's favor? If you were a betting man, would you bet on it, or?
Against my own will, 1 year ago I bet that Trump will win the elections. Although it wasn't my wish, but he did. Now I'm in a situation I have no idea where Trump will take us. Whatever you tell me, I say this is possible. The issue is not betting one way or the other. The issue is try to be proactive for a line that makes sense and that he could follow and could be successful. So I'm resisting your suggestion to bet one way or the other.
Yeah, thank you very much.